House of Horrors. I'm Jason Horton.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
And this is Ghost Town.
Though there are many noteworthy homes we've discussed on this podcast, there's one that we've touched upon a couple of times in different ways, but never have had the eerie, historic, and thoughtful treatment that I think that this topic deserves. Now, close to the eve of Halloween, it's finally time to give this castle on the hill its own episode, one that doesn't do the scope of its history justice in and of itself, but does give you a little taste, a cross-section of this house's incredible pedigree for beauty, mystery, murder, and mayhem. Without further ado, today on Ghost Town, the story of the Pyrenees Castle, also known as the Alhambra Mystery Castle. In the 1920s, LA was being developed from the hillside ranches to the real estate juggernaut we know it now to be, and a young real estate developer named Sylvester Dupuis saw a golden opportunity. The enterprising young man, barely in his 20s, had acquired land on leases to raise sheep and farm barley, oats, and hay, and had gotten very rich from this endeavor. Soon his cattle and sheep grazed over the 15,000 acres in the eastern suburbs of LA. It was a different time, and some livestock even hung out in what's now downtown Los Angeles. Dupuis then diversified into real estate and oil, helping found the town of Temple City with his business partner, Walter P. Temple. While very young, Dupuis had a wife and 4 children and wanted to celebrate his success with a house, reflective of his childhood spent going to visit his family in Europe. Dupuis' French parents had taken him to the many dream castles that dotted the French countryside, which had a profound effect on the developer. He never forgot these architectural marvels and set out to build his own European castle reflective of those in the Pyrenees Mountains of France. So, in 1924, Dupuis paid $500,000 in cash to a local Alhambra architect named John Walker Smart to design the 8,600-square-foot concrete and steel castle of his childhood dreams, nestled in Alhambra, California. Yes, that might sound familiar to you, as it was one of the sites of the devastating fires from January 2025. Then, and even far after then, it was a lush, forested area that overlooked downtown Los Angeles. A bit rural, but absolutely picturesque. The castle had a tile roof, an Italian marble foyer, 10 bedrooms, and 8.5 bathrooms. The continental-style bathtubs had spigots on the side of the tub instead of on the end. There were balconies where Dupuis could look over the family homestead, and a wine cellar where the family made its own wine. To lean into the mysterious European castle of it all, there were, of course, secret passages, including a trap door in the breakfast nook that led to the wine cellar and a passage leading from a bedroom to an attic. The Dupuis called their new home the House on the Hill. In 1927, after the family actually moved in, the children ran around the turrets, the women of the family prepared French meals, and everyone chipped in making and drinking the wine. A pretty good life, I would say. Quote, "My grandfather envisioned us all living together like the 1980s TV program Dallas," Sylvester Dupuis' grandson explained many years later. Despite their fairly public successes, however, the Dupuis were a fairly private family, which led to the castle's first rumors of being a hideout for criminals and perhaps ghosts. Fueling those notions was the reality that the Dupuis day-to-day wasn't all just French wine and familial bliss. Quote, "Oh, it was a nice enough place to live, but it was just too big," recalled Sylvester Dupuis' son Henry. "The family had no servants, and the place was really too much work." There was also the Depression and market instability, making the house a bit of a money pit in the 1930s. Shortly before he died in 1937 of a stroke, Sylvester Dupuis lost most of his money in bad oil investments, leaving his wife land-rich but cash-poor. In 1939, a reporter for the Los Angeles Times attempted to address any rumors or mystery about the family and their financial status. In an article called, quote, Fables of the Alhambra Mystery Castle Explode, researched by the one and only Hadley Mears for PBS SoCal, the article explained, quote, "Because the owners who live in the castle went about their business and talked to no one, an air of mystery developed about the place, giving it the glamour of a nudist colony without a knothole." Not sure what that means. The result was a series of fantastic legends about the place, told about town by hairdressers and barbers, to those who asked about the House of Mystery. For instance, there's the story that the house is owned and occupied by a wealthy motor magnate who never permits himself to be seen entering or leaving the place. It is not true. Then there is the yarn that the place once was occupied by Eastern gangsters. This is just a fable. Also, there are tales of secret entrances, that a garage-like structure in a side hill below the mansion leads into a tunnel beneath the building, and an electrical elevator takes you up to meet the mysterious owners, if you know the password. That one's wrong, too. Well, kind of. The article didn't seem to affect the remaining Dupuis, but by 1946, only Sylvester's widow and a friend were left in the Pyrenees Castle. At that point, the estate was such a financial drain that the Dupuis decided to sell the castle to jeweler R.W. Wilson. They then subdivided the property into 8 apartments, one of which Sylvester's widow lived until her death in 1949. At that point, many different types of long and short-term tenants unpacked their bags at the Pyrenees Castle apartments. A 1977 profile described the castle a lot like you might the Chateau Marmont in the 70s and 80s, which of course we did a 3-part series on back 2 years ago. A kind of shabby chic, past its prime type of dinosaur to be appreciated, but perhaps not admired. After that, according to Mears in her PBS SoCal piece, the castle was sold to an anonymous buyer who wanted a home for herself and her 25 dogs. However, she never ended up moving in, and then the castle was sold again in the 1980s to an enigmatic Hong Kong businessman named Chris C.Y. Yip, who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars renovating the place. By 1994, however, the Pyrenees Castle was formally in the hands of the Bank of Hong Kong. Though the legend of ghosts and vandals and mobsters certainly swirled up until the 1990s, the real notoriety surrounding the house would occur in the 1990s, when Phil Spector enters the picture. We'll talk about it and him after this break. We're back recounting the life of the Pyrenees Castle, or the Alhambra Mystery Castle, the home of Sylvester Dupuis and several other larger-than-life tenants, but none so large as to who would come next, in my humble opinion, in 1998. It was then that legendary and controversial music producer Phil Spector moved into the Pyrenees Castle, buying the estate for a cool $1.1 million. I'd imagine the name Phil Spector is familiar to you, lovers of cultural history, but just in case, Phil Spector was a Bronx-born musical producing genius who was in the group The Teddy Bears with some of his Fairfax High School classmates and friends, including Marshall Lieb, my great-uncle. Small world. Anyway, that's just the beginning. At 19, Spector's song, written for the Teddy Bears, To Know Him Is to Love Him, reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart, and from there his star kept rising, working on countless songs in the 60s and 70s while creating his iconic wall of sound, used to engineer such memorable pop hits like Be My Baby, You've Lost That Loving Feeling, Did Do Ron Ron, Stand By Me, and John Lennon's Imagine, all to sonic perfection. But allegations about Spector were always swirling, especially the pieces of information about his love of guns and gunplay. Spector drunkenly stuck a loaded pistol in Leonard Cohen's neck and slurred, "Leonard, I love you." He responded, "I hope you do, Phil," in a cool Leonard Cohen type of way. His second ex-wife and Ronettes frontwoman, Ronnie Spector, called him a, quote, psychopathic monster, an addict with an obsession around gunplay that was, in and of itself, well documented over decades. In their 1974 divorce settlement, she forfeited all future record earnings and surrendered custody of their 3 children, namely because Spector threatened to kill her. With his controversial reputation becoming more and more of a liability, Spector became a recluse, leaning into his own addictions, and was himself haunted by the 1992 death of his son, Philip Spector Jr., from leukemia. But in the Pyrenees Castle, though he had eventually gotten sober, he was also alone, paranoid and ostracized by the music community, with only an assistant and a handful of friends coming to visit. According to Mears' piece, Spector would often lock the gates of the castle to stop his friends from leaving. On the evening of February 2nd, 2003, he left the castle for a night out in Hollywood and got drunk, ending up at the House of Blues in the early morning hours of February 3rd, 2003. In the VIP Foundation Room at the House of Blues, Spector met the 6-foot-tall blonde TV actor Lana Clarkson, who was working as a hostess there. She was 40, allegedly herself addicted to pills, and had trouble making ends meet. But the Foundation Room was just the place to make fresh contacts, and on that fateful night, she likely viewed Spector as just that. So when he invited her to come back to his castle high on the hill, she agreed, but not for more than a quick rendezvous. At the time, she would tell Phil Spector's driver, Adriano de Souza, quote, "It's going to be fast. I would like to have only one drink." De Souza waited for Clarkson in the driveway to finish her one drink. But at 5 a.m., he heard a, quote, soft popping sound, and shortly after, Spector came down, bloody, revolver in hand. "I think I killed somebody," he said. Soon, Alhambra police arrived and had to taser Spector, navigating the house as music blared through the speaker system. In the foyer, they found the body of Lana Clarkson sprawled out on an ivory chair, covered in blood. After being released on a $1 million bail, 2 murder trials followed, including a media circus that made Spector even more of a recluse. At this time, a depressed Phil Spector often sat for hours in his iguana room, staring at his 3 pet iguanas, Godzilla, Laurel, and Hardy. During Spector's trials, jurors were brought out of sequestration to inspect the castle and the oddity of the man who owned it. According to Mears, during this first tour in 2007, Spector greeted them in sweatpants and sandals. Bloody photos of Clarkson's body were displayed in the foyer, and jurors themselves sat in a replica chair of the one Clarkson's body was found on, attempting to recreate her death pose. The 2007 trial ended in a mistrial, but the retrial in 2009 found Spector guilty of second-degree murder and use of a firearm in commission of a crime. He was sentenced to 19 years to life at the California State Prison, plus 4 years for the firearm charge. He left behind his iguanas, his white piano, his collection of garden gnomes, and his decorative suits of armor, all at the Pyrenees Castle. But they were not alone. A month after he had shot Lana Clarkson in the face, he met his last wife, 26-year-old Rochelle Short, at Dan Tana's. A struggling singer herself, she worked minimum wage and was sleeping on a friend's floor. She quickly moved into the castle and became Spector's third wife. Though Spector, 41 years her senior, was incarcerated, she supported her charming and, quote, childlike husband, firmly believing that her Philip couldn't have possibly murdered anyone. Alone in the Pyrenees Castle, Rochelle kept busy, trying to jumpstart her music career, managing Spector's music catalog, getting a private investigator's license, and playing de facto PR person for Spector himself. Every Sunday, she would drive to the state prison to visit her husband until mid-March 2019, when it was reported that Spector was selling the house for $5.5 million so it could meet the terms of his divorce settlement from Rochelle. Spector died on January 16, 2021, from complications of COVID-19, and eventually Rochelle Short sold the house to an anonymous buyer for $3.3 million in 2021, just months after Spector's death. I certainly hope whoever this buyer is, who still owns the house now, appreciates the history of the Pyrenees Castle, a true Alhambra gem. But I will say to this new buyer, it might be time to make some changes in the castle on the hill, keeping some of the estate's good history, and perhaps letting some of the problematic and heartbreaking parts fade into the background.